Welcome to Season 1, Episode 6 of The Pitch Podcast, brought to you by Alexandria Soccer. I'm your host, Katie Brooks. Today, we are chatting about our competitive adult soccer and futsal teams, known as ASA Reds. We call these our semi-professional or amateur teams. The Reds teams provide a player pathway for recent graduates and college athletes to stay in shape and play at a high level during the summer months and throughout the year. ASA Reds began as a single team of competitive former college athletes who took the Washington Premier League by storm in the early days. Today, under the Reds umbrella, we have men's and women's futsal teams and 5 soccer teams that play in a variety of the country's most competitive amateur leagues, UPSL, NPSL, and WPSL. We'll explain all those acronyms. With me today, I have Jim Hogan, Deputy Director of Tournaments and Programs and your 2025 NPSL Head Coach, Scott Senkier, WPSL Reds Head Coach, and Tim Lenzo, Women's Futsal Reds Head Coach. Before these guys introduce themselves, I want to shout out Mark Wysocki and Will Hanna. Mark helped us launch our men's and women's futsal programs in 2018, setting the precedent for a fantastic program and specifically a very committed pool of women's futsal players who are still active today. Coach Will Hanna led the NPSL Reds team for many years, leading them to the regional semifinals in 2022. So with that, let's kick off. If you all could each introduce yourself, and then we'll start by explaining a little bit about what these teams are. I think as far as the ASA universe and our youth programming, this is something a little bit unique that some people might not know about. So we'll share more. Let's start at the end. Jim.
Thanks, Katie. Jim Hogan, Deputy Director at the club for tournaments and programs. Reds is another one of those programs that I oversee and have a long history with as well, which I'd love to share more later, but for now.
By that he means he was a player in the early days.
Talk about a pathway. Yeah. I've worn a lot of different hats, but excited to share more about that coming up.
Perfect. Scott?
Yeah, Scott Senkier. I coach our ASA Reds women in WPSL. Not full-time at the club, but I've been coaching at ASA for about 10 years-ish. And this is the 5th summer we've had the women's outdoor team.
Nice. Tim?
Yeah, Tim Lenzo. I'm the women's futsal head coach, and starting next year I'll be the Academy Goers director as well.
Yep, great. Okay, so let's start, acronyms aside, leagues aside, in the ASA universe. So thinking of our programs, rec, academy, camps, etc. Where does Reds fall in? Maybe Jim, I'll let you take this. And then I guess as a part of that, where does this fall into, the universe of U.S. soccer or soccer at large in the country?
Yeah, well, first within our club, we want to continue to provide new and unique opportunities for players to continue playing the game as long as possible within their soccer playing career, futsal playing career. And at the same time try and find new competitive leagues and new opportunities for them to express themselves and grow within the game. So the last couple of years we've realized that there was a gap in those high school graduating seniors that are going off to college and then coming back, still playing at a high level and want to be competitive over the summer, if not all year long, if they're local. So a number of those players or ASA players reaching back out saying, hey, can I still play?
Yeah.
What do you have for me? And having played and hosted the Reds program in the Washington Premier League for many years, that morphed into our Reds program over the summer. And we've essentially replaced and mixed in some of the new blood with some of the old blood to then get some of these college players or recently graduated college players playing at a high level an opportunity to continue playing the game.
Yeah.
So from there, we're now at a space where we're integrating more of our current ASA youth into our Reds programming, which is extremely important to us. And within the pyramid, depending on the season that we're talking about, the sport we're talking about, we've reached the highest possible place that we can, given some of the restrictions that we have on facilities and rosters and things like that. But we're excited for the future, just about where we've come from, and obviously we'll share a little bit more about where we're going to be heading.
Yeah. I think that's an important point, that barring someone or an organization saying, hey, we would like to sponsor your adult amateur teams with a huge influx of cash and having a facility, which is a requirement of many leagues, this is the highest kind of, we're losing our jersey. This is the highest play we can offer really at this point, which is pretty exciting. I want to just say, so the early days of Reds, which some of you here might have played early Reds, there was no practices, right? It was kind of like y'all were putting together a team on Sundays and playing really competitively. So we've come a long way since those days.
Yeah.
In the structure.
Yeah, there was no practice. There was just, who do you know? And that player's good. And you bring him in, you show up on the weekend and throw a jersey top on and
just play.
Ball out, not just play, Katie. I mean, there's some players in the group.
I know Reds has some Washington Premier League, which is the highest level local DC DMV league. There's some Reds trophies from early days.
Oh, there's a lot of pride from those days.
In the words of Allen Iverson, practice? Like, hey, not practice.
No, we had transitioned into our working careers and still had the ambition of playing at a high level and thought we could do more than we ever could. And then your body tells you otherwise after a little while.
Yes, I understand that. Before we jump into futsal, which I actually kind of want to start with here, I do want to ask, how does somebody get involved with the Reds team? Obviously, there are kids who have played at ASA who we know of who get involved in a variety of ways, whether they come out for a session, we invite them. How do other people get involved in any of our men's or women's soccer futsal teams?
Tim, you might have a better perspective from the futsal side of things, but just in general, there's a lot of different ways, honestly. Personal connections definitely help. Players try and reach out to other players that they know. We also use our youth system in regards to identifying players that it could be appropriate for and reaching out to them and expressing to them the opportunity that's there, because they may not be thinking about that next step just yet. We have a lot of connections to college coaches in the area that will identify their players that are staying around for the summer and recommend to us certain players. There's a lot of different, ways that people reach out through social media. That's a big one. Yeah. And then our website, which is a couple years old, has an interest form so that if anyone comes across the programs that we offer, they fill it out, and then we reach out to learn a little bit more about them, invite them out to a training session, and then see what the best fit is for them. Does that sound right for futsal as well?
Yeah, it's about the same. I do get a lot of interest from people from all over the country in futsal, I think because there are less high-level opportunities for futsal throughout. So, and that's usually through social media or our interest forum. That's a great, way. But I do think, you kind of started off with a lot of local youth that are aging up, get really interested, and, will reach out to me directly, via email or different ways. So just about any opportunities to play at a high level and compete.
Yeah. That's a good segue. Let's talk a little bit about futsal. I feel like in our ecosystem, the soccer and futsal Reds kind of came into professionalism around the same time. Maybe futsal was just right before. As we mentioned, Mark Wysocki worked here. He played futsal. You played futsal with him. So he was interested in starting the men's team and also really interested in coaching the women's team. I think a cool thing from that time when he started it was he was coaching our oldest women's futsal team. And so those early days, we were always training. I say because I was playing for a little bit, the women were training alongside the U18, U19 girls, which was, made us have like 30 women at practice, which was great. And also, I think started that connection to the Youth Academy Futsal program, which is great. Tim, tell me a little bit about what our ASA Reds futsal program at large looks like right now and kind of what an annual calendar looks like for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 2 men's and 2 women's teams, and they have a summer season and a winter season. The summer season, we're days away from kicking off right now.
My God.
And we're going to be taking at least one women's team to Futsal Nationals.
Nice.
For the second year in a row. And they're really excited. And then we do pickup through the fall and the spring as well. There's a lot of pickup futsal, and we host our own, and just trying to keep the players engaged and getting touches and having fun is a big piece of that. And then in the wintertime, it's, I'd say it's grown every year. I would anticipate 6 to 10 games, and
Wow.
I think probably at minimum 3 tournaments. And from December through the end of February, I think we did 5 this year on the women's side, which was probably 1 or 2 too many. But it is, it's growing and it's expanding, and our connections with the larger futsal community is expanding, which is great. We went to Safira this last winter to their tournament, and they came to our tournament. And there's a number of other futsal directors who are starting to see the collaboration and have started to reach out now about coordinating for next winter too.
I think I love that you mentioned that, because a really cool thing, which we talked a little bit about on the Academy Futsal podcast, is that at our futsal tournament this past year, we hosted a women's all-star game, which I think, the history of having this high-level women's futsal team and program in existence helped lead us to that point. We're seen as sort of a leader in this industry, and so we hosted this really cool high-level game. In the most recent CONCACAF women's futsal tournament, there were 7-8 players who had been on our courts this last winter competing with some of our players and against, playing at the highest level. Is that right?
Yeah. I think there were 8 total who made the final roster for the CONCACAF futsal tournament. I think we had like 12 or 13 that were in the national team player pool for futsal, and it was very high level, and it was exciting to see, and I think the players really enjoyed it, and I know the youth who got to watch it really enjoyed it as well.
Yeah. But before we kind of move to soccer, WPSL, women's Reds, I just want to say this because I think it's interesting. And I don't know if it's because of the longevity of the futsal program and how committed a lot of these women have been actually since the beginning, because there still is a small quorum of women who were there with me in the early days. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I think that the pool of women's players skews slightly older than our current pool of women's soccer players for futsal. And I just think that's interesting and kind of a testament, right? Futsal's a little bit of a new sport, which we've talked about a lot. The training that Mark did, the training that you do, the training that Peja did in the past. I think when we talk to some of these women, they like learning this sport. And it's like an analytical aspect and something, it's a different skill set and something you can do a little bit longer. There's less running 100 yards, which is great. But I just think that's such an interesting and unique and cool thing that we have women in their late 20s, early 30s playing really competitively at high level.
Yeah, I think what makes the women's futsal program really unique is the women themselves. And I do have to credit, Katie, yourself, Emily, who was one of the originals, Rose as well.
Yep.
And we talk all the time about the environment that you guys laid down and trying to maintain that inclusive, supportive, but competitive environment for really probably close to 40 adult women that we train. And they are coming from different walks in their soccer career. Some have never played futsal before, and some, have played since they were 8 or 9, and some are in the futsal national team, and others are, just local and want to play.
Yeah.
But we've kind of maintained that ethos of making sure that it is available, high-level training is available to everyone, and we've been able to balance that with teaching the game to newcomers who catch up rather quickly, but still competing at the highest level, and finishing second at regionals, and I think we were 12 seconds away from a potentially ASA final, but it's been really exciting to see that, and the women, I mean, they are constantly committed to the point where and we'll talk more about it later, I'm sure, but one of our struggles is enough space to host and train 40 committed women every session. And we've looked at other ways to kind of approach that, and do we start making a third team even, because it's been primarily 2 teams, and then you add that dedicated, really invested women's players to some of the new players coming in, and some of that are through connections, like Jim said, from other head coaches and college coaches, and then our youth coming up as well. I think that's something we started to really push over the last couple of years, of getting youth players identified and feeding them in. And, I see that one of the main pieces of what we're trying to do with the program of, hey, these are youth players that, we've invested, and they've invested 10 plus years by the time they age out and as high level futsal players. And, where do they go to play the next level of futsal? And, we're constantly seeing that, and shout out to Ellie Goodrich, who was on the futsal national team. And we got to watch. But I truly believe that over the next 5 to 6 years, we're going to see more ASA products in that pool, and they're going to need a place to come and train between national tournaments.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I just want to give Tim and a lot of the other coaches that have been in that futsal space a lot of credit for the environment. You mentioned it a lot, just in regards to what's created by the coaches, but also the players, creating an inclusive environment that's welcoming to the youth, welcoming to players that are can transition quickly into learning a new sport and being competitive at a high level. And it makes me think of the conversations I've had with Scott over the years about the environment for the women's team over the summer, and that being a really important piece of the conversations to a lot of the players coming in. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think also, like, the going back a little bit to what you said about the player pool being a little bit, we say older, like, I mean, still
speaking.
I think, right, like the WPSL season, or the women's summer team, is like 7 to 8 weeks, 8 weeks max.
Yeah.
So it's so short, whereas I feel like futsal has a great situation and environment where you really can do, like, it's year round, maybe 6 months of the year, but it's an opportunity for, like, to build, like, team chemistry, not only at futsal but outside of it. And so it's a more consistent and, like, conducive environment, I think, which is good for people that are working full time, or that are not looking to, maybe I can train for an hour and a half for futsal, and then I have, like, an hour game, and people want to play 7v7 or less when they get older, right? It's like, I'm not trying to play 11v11 until I'm 35 years old. Like, so I think that is I feel like that contributes to it, and something that I wish, I know we'll talk about probably in a second, but, like, the WPSL season is so condensed and tight, so it's hard to. It's just it's a different beast, I would say.
I do want to segue into WPSL and outdoor, but I also want to we've talked a little bit about how we kind of set the precedent in the early days of building something. So Mark was like, you guys should play. Katie, Emily, Maya, Rose, Jill, we had some other people. Like, this will be fun. And I remember Emily one of our first practices, brought us all into this windowless room at District Sports. We had a pre-practice meeting, and she was like, why are we doing this? Like, let's as a team, as a group, decide like why this is important to us. Because like we can all sign up to play adult league any time, you know, whatever. Obviously, we were playing futsal as a new sport to many of us, but I think that really helped us because we talked about wanting to create pathways, wanting to have an opportunity to train, wanting to be with, you know, women who played at a high level, etc. So, but it was a shout out to District Sports for our early days of training, if anybody's familiar. All right, let's talk a little bit about WPSL Reds. Scott, you've been with the team since its inception. What have the last 5 years looked like? What's the trajectory?
So I think we started summer of 2021. So if everybody remembering back to, it's like, when was COVID like peak, and then after that, so we were, you know, pretty much a year removed from COVID. Started in the U23 CCL league. And in terms of like, I remember like the roster makeup of just the first team was like, you know, shout out to the 0203 age group from ASA. There was, I don't want to name names because I'll leave someone off, but there's about 3 to 5 players from that group who came on the first U23 team. So they were either going to be seniors or were going to their freshman year of college. So that was part of the team. And then shout out Zoe Bukak, former Alexandria City high school graduate.
And ASA player.
Who brought, I would say, a pool of like, you know, 5 to 7, 23 to 25-year-olds to the first team. And so that, you know, and then obviously additional players on top of that got us off the ground. So the first 3 years was U23, CCL, and then, you know, we entered into WPSL last year.
I want to say before you move on, like some of those early days as we're just getting started, we don't know what we don't know. Like we had like a former NWSL player who was amazing, Noelle, who'd played with Racing Louisville recently, who, like, I don't know that, you know, league regulations are different now, but she was great to have on the team and set a really good example for the younger girls.
Yeah. And so I think this is where, like, you know, we think back to, like, okay, when we were playing WPL, you know, it's like a lot of older players, right? And then so on the women's side, it's, you know, I'm in the first couple seasons, I was like, I want to get a pool of players between age 25 and 30 who have good playing experience and are like doing things in their professional lives that will be great mentors for the youth players we have coming up and college players that are coming back for the summer. Also, they are great, you know, having those like player coach type relationships with like some of the older players and youth players is awesome.
Yeah.
So I think the first few years it was like finding what player pool is going to work best. And then, you know, we would also offer, and we still do, like some training opportunities for the rising seniors, maybe a rising junior, you know, depending. But like if they want to, if they're off the youth season and they're done, if they want to train once or twice a week with the women's team, it's a great opportunity for that. So, yeah. And then, you know, in terms of roster, I think the unique part about it, right, is like this year we started our season on May 13th and it ends on July 1st.
Yeah.
So it's really tight. And it's, you know, obviously like Jim went over the goal of like the pathway for the youth players. And then it's an interesting exercise in a player's ability to like adapt and build chemistry with people in a very short period of time. So I think for that, it makes people be a little more extroverted. You sort of have to like, to really mesh and have some cohesion on the field. So I do enjoy that part of it is sort of seeing new relationships develop. And then obviously the league is competitive and it's great. And it's awesome for college players to come home, still compete, have fun, but be a little bit different than their normal environment.
Yeah.
And then obviously for the youth players to see like, hey, you know, when I'm 25 years old, let's say I live in DC, I can still come back to Alexandria and I can play in a super competitive league till till whenever.
Till your legs give out.
Maybe, yeah, we avoid injuries, but
yeah. Jim, I want to move to you, and I want you to talk a little bit about NPSL and UPSL and how those currently complement each other. And then I want to circle back, Scott, to something you said. And there's a number of examples across futsal and soccer about how we've talked a lot about player pathway, but these programs also give young adults ways to get involved in other ways. So I want to talk a little bit about that. But first, tell us about the men's soccer landscape.
Yeah, so we do have 3 teams, U23s, UPSL, and NPSL. UPSL plays in the fall and the spring. So in the spring, which is happening now at the end of May, where you've got 3 teams, UPSL, U23, and NPSL, all training together and having games around the same time. UPSL has been a great mix over the years of allowing some of the U17 and U19 academy guys to, because those MLS Next rosters, the U17, U19 age groups as a whole are large. Mm-hmm. And there's high school that they're playing, there's injuries, there's a lot more that comes up. So providing them with additional playing opportunities through the UPSL platform the last 2 years has magnified and grown in the eyes of the players too. Mm-hmm. And now they're seeking out those opportunities. We have discussions with our head coaches at the youth level, and we try and figure out which players it makes the most sense for and why. So there's a really good relationship developing, and we don't see that going anywhere. We only see that getting stronger. Mm-hmm. To now look at the U23s, which has historically been our, one of our summer league offerings within the CCL league. It's local, most similarly related to NPSL, college players coming back, high level high school players integrating in and providing them with another opportunity to play in a league in a really short season over the summertime. Mm-hmm. So there's a number of different platforms, kind of like what Tim was saying. Just by the interest and of people, we're able to support these teams with roster sizes that are extremely healthy. On the women's side, we have the WPSL and WPSL2. Mm-hmm. So we have 2 extremely healthy rosters this year, which really bodes well to some of the things we want to do in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, and similar to how I mentioned in futsal, correct me if I'm wrong, there were times, or maybe this is standard throughout the past year, where the UPSL practiced alongside U19, which I think is great because then, even if you're a player who's maybe not selected for the roster that year, you train against, you scrimmage them at practice, you see the level that team is at, and it's something that, you've prepares you for college if that's the case. It's something you can aspire to. It's just another connection.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when they're training alongside each other, you're looking across the field and you're seeing men and women on the other side of the field who have a really high level playing credentials. Mm-hmm. And once those discussions start, you see kind of the competitive edge come out and the desire to play against them, test themselves against them, even if it's only in one activity where you're borrowing a player, or if you need a couple players at the end of the practice for a scrimmage. I mean, the cohesion and the connectiveness is there.
Yeah.
And that's why we really value the opportunity to train alongside each other.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about how these offer another way for young adults to get involved. Talk a little bit about Paul.
Yeah, Paul Sheeland, our current UPSL coach, was a ASA youth player as well. So he's got an interesting story and a pathway that we hope will be replicated across some of these other teams. Where an ASA youth player graduated, went off to Wisconsin, and started working with Forward Madison, a USL 2 club out there, a very successful one, and getting his feet wet on the coaching grounds, and then started taking his licenses and had reached back out.
Yeah.
And had always been in camps and various other programs coaching, played futsal with us growing up, so he was very connected to the club, and when he'd come back in the summers, we always found a way to get him involved. And he had shared his aspirations of being a high-level college coach or somewhere in the pyramid, assistant coach, just to kind of get the experience and see where it takes him.
Yeah.
So in doing so, we were lucky enough for him to move back home this winter and got him involved on an assistant coach level with the UPSL group within the first couple weeks alongside Matt Curtin. Got an opportunity to take over some of the sessions, some of the activities, and see and feel what it was like. And then Matt Curtin, a long time.
Shout out, Matt.
Long time, very successful, very well loved UPSL coach. Took an opportunity to move to Massachusetts to be closer to family, and so identified a couple people to step into that role. And Paul made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And he got the opportunity and has done a great job with it. And I think in discussions with him, I had an 8 o'clock phone call with him this morning, and Nick Kunkel, our U23 coach.
Yep.
To talk about all the things that we're talking about now, maybe in a bit more detail about the session and roster makeup. But we were discussing opportunities for youth players.
Yeah.
We've got roster deadlines coming up. We've got all the league games starting for all the teams and how we were going to manipulate the roster to give people opportunity. And I think I love that, the moment you shared, right, Emily brought you guys into the dark room, like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
We constantly have to remind ourselves of why we are doing this.
Yeah.
And so it's really nice to be with a group of people that are all on the same page about why we're doing this. It's for the opportunity. Are we going to strive to win games and win the league and win regionals, nationals? Absolutely. We're all competitors in here.
Yeah.
It's in our blood. But the way we go about doing it is going to be systematical, coming to how we train, the roster makeup, the leagues that we're in, the coaches that we select. It's all well thought out.
Yeah.
From at least my perspective, and everyone embodies that.
Yeah.
Giving the opportunity to the kids, is the youth, and staying connected with them at their adult ages as coaches, as players, is the long-term goal and what's going to define our success.
Yeah. Something you mentioned there made me think of this. Alongside Scott, Christy is helping coach WPSL, and she is a local college coach. I think for kids who are coming home from college, one, their coaches are often wanting them to play in some sort of summer league, and so it's kind of nice to have, a precedent here for a coach to say, oh, we know Alexandria has a team. We know such and such has a team. This is a good place to play. But also for coaches to coach, because it's a nice supplement to their, full-time, I guess, a little more fall, winter, spring. Scott, can you talk a little bit about that experience and how she feels about being involved?
I think, so Christy Bravo, shout out, assistant coach at Georgia Mason, ASA youth coach. I'm thrilled to have Christy on board this year. I think her playing background and her coaching background and her professional background are very unique, and it's great. Obviously it's great for her to still be involved in the game and coach. It's also just a different voice from mine, right? And I think, having her is it's great because she can relate to players who are in college and be like, I'm coaching active college players and helping build confidence in players who maybe are struggling, who are home for the summer, who are like, I'm coming off an injury, or maybe I wasn't playing as much, and we have an environment for them to sort of thrive in and build that confidence back up. So it's and then the coaching side, it's much different, right, than coaching a U15 team. Right. So anybody that's playing wants to be there and on the WPSL team.
You're coming after work. You are committed.
Yes.
Or on your summer break.
So we're not really having to motivate them to at the same time, we know what the summer is, right? It's the summer, so it's sort of enabling them tactically. We're not going to teach them a lot in 7 weeks, maybe a little bit, but really it's just managing the players, giving them a training environment that is legitimate and semi-professional, organized. Obviously, these are all given or expected, I should say, maybe not given.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about how we've talked about how our high school kids get involved, training alongside, being called up. let's talk a little bit about how we get our youth involved and ways that we hype up the younger kids for the older kids. Can you talk about Pivot to Pro Night, which you launched 2 years ago?
Yes, yeah. So Pivot to Pro Night was essentially with the plan of, hey, we have these dedicated futsal players. How can we use them to give back to and enhance the youth players outside of just training with them, right?
Yeah.
Which is obviously a great piece. So again, the women really took to it, and we hosted a night for our academy younger girls futsal programs, where the women came and they ran the sessions for them, and they did activities with them and had fun with them, and it was a mix of our women players and then some of our older youth players as well. I think that they really enjoyed just having fun, and then the women, to their credit, kind of took it from that and at regionals made signs for the players.
Right.
Yeah, and went to every game there. They printed out a schedule and went and just cheered on these 10-year-old futsal players, which was so amazing to see.
Yeah.
But you could just see them just wanting to be part of the ASA community. And some of these women weren't ASA youth. They came later in life, but the environment that we have has been so positive and so inclusive from the get-go that they are just wanting more and more to be a part of it. And if that means spending their extra Wednesday night to work with 7 and 8-year-olds, they're happy to do it.
Yeah.
And then you start to see, these kids, they light up when they see their these women players.
And there's pro players cheering for you at your game. You're like, what?
They get really excited, and I think that's been something that we'll continue to do on the futsal side, and I think we're looking at other ways, and I'll let Jim take it from here, of kind of taking that same idea and translating it to other platforms to again just give back to the community and the players who look up to what these adults are doing.
Yeah.
I can confirm there was no fans for WPL 15 years ago. Absolutely not.
Which is probably better, maybe, at that time.
Yeah, that's true.
There were some red cards and other
Great behavior.
By the time this airs, I believe there will still be time to sign up for the Reds Clinic.
Wow, quick turnaround.
I know.
Impressive.
So tell us about the Reds Clinic.
So today's Tuesday, and the clinic's on Thursday, Katie. So, wow, okay. Well, credit to Tim. I mean, he's definitely done a great job finding the ways to connect the adults to the youth on the futsal side of things. And the Reds Clinic is another opportunity to do that on the soccer side. And we communicate that out early to our WPSL and NPSL players that, part of playing for the Reds is giving back to the community and connecting to the youth. And so we host a Reds Clinic and get an opportunity to work with generally the 6 to 10-year-old age range. They're enthusiastic about the players. They love getting to know who they are, where they played, all the accolades that they've achieved in their playing careers. And honestly, talking to the players, they're excited about it. And it's part of my conversation with them over the summer. And I say to them, do you remember being a kid and looking up to athletes, college athletes? You are now that player. And a part of your acceptance is going to be being involved with some of our community outreach, and this is one of them. So we host a 2-hour clinic. It's this Thursday, 5 to 7 at Simpson Field. Registrations could still be open by the time it airs. If not, we'll see you next year because we'll be back every single year.
Yeah.
But it's a great opportunity, and I will say that seeing the players, the youth cheering on the players that we didn't have fans for, but now they have fans for. We also have youth activities. We have to have ball kids.
I was going to say, shout out your ball kids. Recruit them in.
Minimum standards. So if you're at least 10 years old, reach out. We could use you. But then we also like to do halftime mini games. We like to do player escorts, where they walk out with the starting 11. All those opportunities are available and something that we're building into each game.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's two things with that. Like, one, it's so minimal the effort that the players are giving, but it has such a big impact on the youth players. And I remember there was a neighbor down the street who was 6 years older than me and played soccer at a very high level, and he probably doesn't remember this at all, but one day in his backyard he just let me kick around with him, and I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and that I've never forgotten that experience and how excited that was for me. And it was probably 15 minutes long, but to this day and that's kind of what I kind of drove the bus about, how can we give something like that and be more intentional to the players in that aspect. And I think the other piece of it is, and I love that Jim, talks to the players when they come, this is part of being an Alexandria Reds player, is there are a lot of options for these players to go play, and especially in the summer in soccer, it's not quite the same as futsal, where they can go to a ton of different programs, and I believe what makes Alexandria more unique than others isn't just the product on the field, but it's the environment, it's the community, it's the things that we're doing to include everybody and build more pathways. And I think I'm segueing here to a couple of things, but you had mentioned Nick Kunkel as a coach. We've already talked about Paul. Nick was, when we transitioned into a more professional Reds men's program, was one of our first goalkeepers, and now he's a coach. Paul is a youth player, and now he's a coach of men's team. And Christy got her start with our women's futsal program, but
shout out, yep.
But
just to make that clear.
Yeah, but you see how they they stay around because of what we're doing, and they have other areas and places that they could coach, but it is something unique to Alexandria, and you can see the pathway in it.
That's a good point, Tim. One other thing that has come up a lot recently too is providing opportunities for players who want to expand their role within the game, whether it's coaching actual futsal teams and also being on the Reds teams, or coaching in camps over the summer. A number of our players are back and they want to be coaching camps, or having taken on junior academy roles and other programs within the club. So we're realizing that there are these great mentors within these teams that have maybe aged out of the college days that are looking at their next involvement within the sport, and we have an opportunity to provide them a bit of coaching experience, whether it's at the youngest age groups or whether it's in different sports, that they can continue to expand their touch points with us and see a long-lasting relationship with the club. I think that means a lot to us to see the familiar faces. It means a lot to the community. They start to get a lot of things that we talk about in terms of the environment and why we do what we do. So those opportunities are becoming more and more prevalent within the rosters.
Yeah. All right. So we are kicking off, or have actually kicked off, both NPSL and WPSL summer seasons. How do our Alexandria fans catch a game? What do they need to know?
Well, all of our home games are at Limerick this year, which is a great venue. Do want to say thank you to our partners from last year, Episcopal High School. Had a lot of great venue features for us to kind of provide our players and provide our fans. But they're being occupied this summer from some of the Club World Cup teams that are coming in there. So we will not be there this year. All our home games will be at Limerick, which operationally is a great thing. We also really enjoy playing on the field there. So if you can come out, our schedule is posted on flyers around the city, or they will be soon. We'll have our website, alexandriareds.org. We'll have all the schedule information, and then newsletters will also go out and give you information on the games.
Do you need a ticket?
You do need a ticket. Yep.
Buy a ticket online or at the gate?
Yep.
Okay.
Tickets online, tickets at the game. We will have a special event too on June 8th. Maybe you can share a little bit more about that. But yeah, come out, watch us play. Scott and I will appreciate it. The players will appreciate the support.
Certainly.
The women open their game May 28th, Wednesday. Open their home season.
Home opener
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Heavy rain expected. Come on out.
Perfect. We love a spring season. Yeah. Let me, on June 8th, we actually have a triple header. So if you really want to commit, you can see UPSL, WPSL, NPSL all in a row. At Limerick, you can head over to our partner Lost Boy Cider in between games and cool off and enjoy a refreshment. But what we are excited to share is at halftime of the NPSL game. NPSL kicks off at 6:30 that day. So at halftime, we will be presenting the Zoteka Scholarship Award to this year's recipient, who is Osman, longtime ASA player. And so that'll be a special ceremony that we'll do at halftime. So, but that's June 8th, and you can stay for a full 6 hours and
A lot of
see
soccer
all of
on
our
that day.
teams play.
A lot of soccer on that day. That does make me think of game day and all that goes into game day. And wanted to give a lot of credit to some people that have been involved with the programming, not just the roster creation, but all the back end stuff on getting the fields ready. Leland Creadick is a long time Alexandria Reds GM, who's transitioned out, but certainly put in a lot of work over the years in laying foundation, whether it was roster creation or getting fields set up.
Put up signboards.
There's a lot that goes on. And obviously Xavier helped out last year with the WPSL team, and we could not do what we do without a lot of helping hands. And this year, thankfully, we've got a lot of support on staff with coaches, just like Paul and Nick, who volunteered their time over the years, wanting to get the experience of working with college players, high-level players that recently graduated college, have been out to training sessions, helping do all the little things that make a session clean and allow us to operate in a very functional way. So we could not do it with all the helping hands that are out there.
Yeah. I think it's easy to forget because we all go to a tier 1 pro game at MLS or NWSL, right, at a stadium. And there are a lot of things built in we don't think about. But when you're at a smaller game, there are still a lot of built-in things that you forget about, like somebody's got to get the ice and make sure the trainer's there and set up the tents and ensure the scoreboard is on and the streaming system is set up, which are all good things. But we've mentioned this a little bit. They come as requirements. The league requires that you stream the games, which is great. More people can tune in. You can tune into our YouTube channel to catch both WPSL and NPSL this summer. But all of that, somebody has to do.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, you sign up for these leagues and you have the minimum standards. So you know what to expect, and you're going to get a certain level of experience when you go there as a player, as a coach, as a fan. But there's a lot of work to make that happen. Even the days before, we're trying to figure out the roster and how to communicate the roster and numbers, and it does give a professional feel to it leading up to and during the game, which is nice.
We are actively recruiting a laundry partner. If anybody's interested, laundromat.
Yes.
Full company. If anybody would like to do that, so it's not in my basement.
Yes. Many washer and dryers have been used in volunteers and staff basements. Currently got a pile of uniforms in my basement, having just been cleaned and ready to go for the weekend.
That is a perfect segue. Everybody think about your hopes and dreams. We do this at the end of, most of the podcasts where we talk about ASA programs. We've been pie in the sky. Where do you see this program in 5 years? What do you hope for it? Where do you want it to be? Aside from built-in washer and dryer. Tim, I'll let you go first. Where do you see futsal going?
Yeah, in 5 years, men and women 5-time defending national champions is what I see.
Perfect.
But no, I do see continued growth on both sides, the men's and the women's continued professionalism, and with that, getting more of a league structure for both men's and women. I think that we're very close in making that happening, and how that can just benefit the players and the experience, and a facility to host these games and have the fans come, and getting to watch the CONCACAF tournament and talk to the players and coaches who are out there, and just going to actual futsal arenas with fans and that environment would be my hope and dream for both of our men's and our women's programs and players.
Yeah. We need if nothing else, we just need a space to hang our banners. We were joking about this the other day. Regional champion, like a college arena.
Yes.
Need a space for banners.
Mm-hmm.
Scott?
5 to 6 in the next 5 years. With the question, I think just more for the Reds women, more longevity in terms of roster and some longer tenured players would be great. Like, I think it'd be awesome in 5-6 years if we're like, we have, half the 12 to 15 players who have come up through the youth system, graduated, played in college or didn't play in college, but are still playing on the team. I think right now we have 2, I think. Mia Medeiros, Sofia De Pasquale came from like U13, U12, maybe before, and are still on, still playing with ASA, which I think is amazing. And then, obviously continuing to have 2 teams with large rosters, on a consistent summer by summer would be fantastic.
Yeah, I'm glad we mentioned facilities. I'm glad we mentioned the connections with the players and longevity. Those are 2 important pieces. The connection to the community is going to continue to grow. And as overseeing the Reds program as a whole, we're always going to strive to provide our players and coaches with the best experience possible, the highest level possible. Most of it's going to come down to timing in regards to what that next leap is going to look and feel like, whether it's facility-wise or it's league-wise. But ambition is there. Absolutely is. The community, I know, will support it. As we wanted to avoid the pyramid conversation, but as we continue to provide more steps up in that pyramid, it'll be about timing. But the goal is to continue to reach the highest level possible, while still staying true to our values. All right, connecting to the community, providing more coaches with opportunities to grow within the game, providing more players the opportunity to play longer and at a higher level locally, and to connect these kids who might be 12 years old now, but in 5 years are 17 and aspiring to play on our ASA Reds teams at the highest level. So we won't stop. We continue to be dreamers in the office, but more than dreamers, we act on a lot of this stuff. So tune in 5 years to season 6 of
the podcast,
and we'll replay this conversation and say,
we'll see how we did.
Yeah, see what boxes we checked off.
Look back. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming on. Catch a WPSL, NPSL game this summer. WPSL 2, UPSL will be, still has a couple more games. We'll be back in the fall and spring. We'll share more about our women's futsal team as they prep for nationals, along with the men's team. If you would like to get involved, whether as a player, as a coach, as a supporter, as game day, as a ball kid, I think this program, if it hasn't been clear, is very community-based, and there's a lot of opportunity, maybe in a way that's even a little more unique than our youth programs, for support.
Absolutely.
So don't hesitate to reach out. That's all we got today. Shout out to Mark Meadows for the intro and outro music, and we'll see you for the final episode of season 1 next time.